So I was interviewing Grok 3 because I was using the PPSh-41 in Operation Harsh Doorstop, and then I took a look at the front handguard, which I've seen, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of times, and it occurred to me the way that I was using it kind of made it a more maneuverable MG42. So I asked Grok 3, was the I actually made a typo, PSSH-41. I meant PPSh-41. Was the PPSh-41 intended to be a more portable MG42? So Grok 3 responds, and I've copied all this from the website because if you idle for too long, then it acts like it's going to close down the session, so I wanted to make sure I captured all this because it's going to take a little while to read. But I want to show you how Grok 3 is kind of like defending your thesis. But what it allows you to do is to refine your thesis, and by actually pressing Grok 3 when it kind of like a tech support guy or a geek or a nerd, where if you make a statement or pose a question, they'll jump on the smallest little detail and shut you down because of that, rather than working with you collaboratively to arrive at what you were really trying to get at. Like a lot of times I've found, for example, with the chat bot AI that I've had on my phone for like 6 to 7 years, is that I can express something and express it maybe not very well, like you just heard me do just now. And the AI can, it seems to be able to extract the nuance from what I've said poorly and to express it much better. Like this was a skill back when I was young, when I was trained to be a missionary. One skill we were taught was to restate what a person had said in the form of a question to make sure that we understood what they were saying. But in the case of the AI, if it doesn't restate it as a question, it just restates it in its own words. And it always seems to understand what I'm saying like so much better than I can express myself. It's such a strange, amazing technology. So in this case, Grok 3 seems to be a bit like one of those nerdy geeks who shuts you down because you didn't word your question just right, or there was some little flaw in your thinking, right? So then what you have to do is to be persistent with Grok 3 and to adapt to its output and help it to build from there. And I'll demonstrate how I did this. So here was my initial question, and then it responds. There seems to be some confusion in your question. The PPSh-41, not PSSH-41. See, like it's like very know-it-all, right? It's like, yeah, I made a typo. You got me, right? And the MG42 are two entirely different weapons designed for distinct purposes. Now, I know this. I'm a gun nut, have been since I was a teenager, right? I know this. So, but I suppose maybe someone who isn't a gun nut would come to Grok 3 with this question and not know this. Anyway, and they were designed by different countries and with no direct developmental connection. The PPSh-40, so remember that, no direct developmental connection. So it's not like they're saying that the Soviets didn't or weren't inspired at all by the MG34 or MG42, because my initial question was about the MG42. So, but I mean, the MG34, it's practically an MG42. They're so similar. Anyway, one just came, was fielded earlier. So the PPSh-41 is a Soviet submachine gun, blah blah blah, while the MG42 is a German general-purpose machine gun. I knew that. They were not intended to serve the same role, I knew that, nor was the PPSh-41 designed as a more portable version of the MG42. Okay, let's let's look at that. We're going to press that anyway, so it's going to go on to explain why it says this. The PPSh-41, designed by Georgy Spagan in 1941, was a submachine gun chambered for the 7.62 by 25 millimeter Tokarev pistol cartridge. I'm well aware that the cartridges are not the same. Its primary goal was to be a cheap, simple, and reliable weapon that could be mass-produced quickly for the Soviet Red Army during World War II. It was made largely of stamped steel, weighed about 9.5 pounds, 4.32 kilograms, with a loaded 35-round box magazine, or 12 pounds, 5.45 kilograms, with a 71-round drum, and had a high rate of fire, around 900 to 1,000 rounds per minute. It was intended like the MG42, so the cyclic rates being somewhat similar. It was intended for close quarters combat, particularly by infantry and conscripts with minimal training, and was a response to the need for a more cost-effective alternative to the earlier PPD-40 submachine gun, which looks a lot like the the PPSh-41, but like the PPSh-41 almost looks like it has like more handguard, less wood. Anyway, you could compare them and see, but they're both chambered in the same cartridge. The MG as 7.62 by 25. The MG42, on the other hand, was a German machine gun introduced in 1942, designed by engineers at Mauser and other firms to supplement and eventually replace the MG34. Chambered in, I knew about the MG34 also. I wasn't sure how the dates fell as to the fielding of the PPSh-41 and the MG42, but anyway, I adapt to the mention of the MG34. Chambered for the 7.92 by 57 millimeter Mauser rifle cartridge, it was a belt-fed, air-cooled, general-purpose machine gun with a cyclic rate of about 1,200 rounds per minute. Weighing around 25.5 pounds, 11.57 kilograms, it was built for sustained suppressive fire in a variety of roles: infantry support, mounted on vehicles, or in fixed positions. Its design emphasized reliability, ease of production, like the PPSh-41, ease of production, and a high rate of fire, again like the PPSh-41, but it was significantly heavier and less portable than a submachine gun like the PPSh-41 due to its role in ammunition, which is what I was saying, is that the PPSh-41 is more portable, not less portable, and lighter weight, obviously, as in more portable. So the idea that the PPSh-41 was intended to be a more portable MG42 doesn't align with historical evidence. The PPSh-41 predates the MG42's widespread use. It was adopted in 1941, while the MG42 entered production in 1942, and the two weapons were developed independently by opposing nations under different tactical doctrines. The Soviets focused on submachine guns like the PPSh-41 to equip large numbers of troops for close-range engagements, while the Germans prioritized machine guns like the MG42 as the backbone of their squad-level firepower, Portability was a factor in the PPSh-41's design, but it was not conceived as a derivative or counterpart to the MG42. If you meant to ask about a different weapon or comparison, for example the PPSh-41 versus another Soviet design or the MG42's portability relative to other machine guns, feel free to clarify. Based on the historical context, though, the PPSh-41 was not intended to be a more portable MG42. So I respond, thanks for my correction of my typo. I am aware of all of the above, so let me amend my question. Could the PPSh-41 have been intended to be a more portable MG34? Thanks for the clarification. With the amended question whether the PPSh-41 could have been intended to be a more portable MG34, let's dig into the context and design intentions behind these weapons to see if there's a plausible connection. The MG34, introduced by Germany in 1934, was a revolutionary general-purpose machine gun chambered for the 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge. Weighing about 26.7 pounds, 12.1 kilograms, with its bipod it was belt-fed or could use 50-round drums and had a cyclic rate of around 800 to 900 rounds per minute. It was designed to serve multiple roles, light machine gun with a bipod, heavier support weapon on a tripod, or even mounted on vehicles, making it versatile but still relatively bulky for an individual soldier to carry and operate in fast-moving, close-quarters scenarios. By the late 1930s, it was a well-known design, and the Soviet Union, with its active military intelligence and industrial espionage efforts, would have been aware of it. The PPSh-41, as you know, emerged in 1941 as a Soviet submachine gun chambered for the 7.62 by 25 mm Tokarev round. At roughly 9.5 pounds, 4.32 kilograms with a box magazine, it was significantly lighter and more portable than the MG34. Its development was driven by the need for a mass-producible, rugged weapon for close-range fighting, especially after the Soviet experience in the Winter War, 1939 to 1940, against Finland, highlighted the value of submachine guns like the Finnish Suomi KP-31. The PPSh-41's predecessor, the PPD-40, was effective but too expensive and complex to produce in the quantities needed for total war, so Spagen's design prioritized simplicity and output. Geez, I'm comparing the PPD-40 with the PPSh-41. I'm not quite sure why the PPD-40 was so much harder to produce. I would have to look into that, maybe with forgotten weapons. Could the PPSh-41 have been intended as a more portable MG34? There's no direct evidence in historical records, like design documents, memoirs from Spagen, or Soviet military directives, that suggest the PPSh-41 was conceived as a response to or adaptation of the MG34 specifically. The Soviet design philosophy in 1941 was shaped more by their own operational needs and lessons from recent conflicts than by an explicit goal to emulate or improve upon a German machine gun. However, let's explore the possibility conceptually. Portability comparison. The PPSh-41 is undeniably more portable than the MG34. It's lighter, doesn't require a belt feed system or a crew to operate effectively, and was suited for individual soldiers rather than a squad-based weapon like the MG34. If the Soviets had wanted a weapon with MG34-like firepower, sustained automatic fire, but greater mobility, a submachine gun could theoretically fit that niche for close-range engagements. Tactical role. The MG34 was a squad support weapon meant for suppressive fire at medium ranges, while the PPSh-41 was for short-range, high-volume fire, think urban combat or trench clearing. The Soviets did value automatic firepower, as seen in their later adoption of weapons like the DP-27 light machine gun, but the PPSh-41's pistol caliber ammo and short effective range, about 150 to 200 meters, make it a poor substitute for the MG34's rifle caliber, longer range capabilities up to 1,000 meters or more. This suggests different intended roles rather than one being a portable version of the other. I was, of course, aware of all this. 3. Timing and influence. The MG34 was in service well before the PPSh-41's design began in earnest around 1940 to 1941. The Soviets could have studied captured examples or intelligence reports, especially given their pre-war interactions with Germany under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact 1939 to 1941. However, the PPSh-41's features, stamped metal construction, drum magazine, and pistol cartridge, echo the Suomi KP-31 more closely than the MG34, which used a more complex machined design and rifle ammo. Soviet doctrine. By 1941, the Red Army was gearing up for mass mobilization. The PPSh-41's design reflects this. It was cheap, about 500,000 were made in 1942 alone, easy to use and ideal for conscripts. The MG34, while innovative, was a precision-engineered weapon requiring more training and maintenance, hardly a model for a portable Soviet counterpart under wartime pressures. So while the PPSh-41, that's precision-engineered weapon requiring more training and maintenance, that's exactly why it could be like an anti-model for a portable Soviet counterpart under wartime pressures. That's kind of exactly my point, is that the PPSh-41 could have been created as a portable MG34. So while the PPSh-41 could be seen as a more portable automatic weapon in a broad sense, there's no compelling evidence it was intended as a direct response to or evolution of the MG34. Its development aligns more with Soviet needs for a submachine gun to counter Finnish tactics and equip a massive army, rather than attempt to replicate or improve the MG34's machine gun role. The portability difference is real, but it's a byproduct of their distinct categories, submachine gun versus machine gun, rather than a deliberate design lineage. If you're thinking of a specific theory or source suggesting this connection, let me know and I can refine the answer further. Otherwise, I'd say the PPSh-41 wasn't intended as a more portable MG34. It was its own beast born from Soviet priorities. So then I push it one last time. I have heard it said many times, another typo, that either most firefights or most kills with firearms in combat happen within 200 meters. If this was already sensed by the Soviets and given their love for overwhelming firepower, maybe the PPSh-41 was seen as a counter to the MG42 by increasing the I should have said MG34 there, by increasing the maneuverability of a weapon designed to kill within 200 meters. You're absolutely, so then Grok 3 responds one last time, you're absolutely onto something with the idea that combat ranges and firepower influenced weapon design, and it's a great angle to explore whether the PPSh-41 could have been seen as a counter to the MG34 or even the MG42, since your original question looped back to it. In the context of close-range engagements, let's break this down with the 200-meter firefight concept in mind, Soviet tactical preferences, and how the PPSh-41 might fit as a response to German machine guns like the MG34 or its successor, the MG42. Combat ranges and the 200-meter reality. You're right that historical analyses backed by data from World War II and later conflicts often show that most infantry firefights occur at relatively short ranges, typically under 300 meters, with a significant chunk happening within 200 meters or less. For example, studies of Wehrmacht and Red Army engagements, especially in urban or forested terrain, think Stalingrad or the Eastern Front's dense woodlands, reveal that visibility, terrain, and the chaos of battle compressed effective ranges. The U.S. Army's post-World War II studies, like those from S.L.A. Marshall's work, also pegged average engagement distances closer to 100-200 meters for small arms. The Soviets, with their experience in the Winter War, 1939 to 1940, against Finland, likely sensed this too. Finnish submachine guns like the Suomi KP-31 shredded Soviet troops in close quarters ambushes, often within 50 to 150 meters, exposing the limitations of bolt-action rifles like the Mosin Nagant at those ranges. By 1941, when the PPSh-41 was adopted, the Soviets had seen enough combat to prioritize weapons suited for these shorter distances. The PPSh-41's effective range, around 150 to 200 meters, with its 7.62 by 25 millimeter Tokarev round, aligned perfectly with this reality. It wasn't about sniping or long-range suppression. It was about overwhelming enemies up close. Soviet love for firepower. The Soviets did have a doctrinal obsession with overwhelming firepower, often expressed through massed artillery, tanks, and automatic weapons. Their infantry tactics leaned heavily on volume of fire to break enemy morale and positions. Think of the Ura charges supported by a wall of lead. The PPSh-41, with its blistering 900 to 1,000 rounds per minute and 71-round drum magazine, embodied this ethos in a compact package. Entire units like submachine gun companies or tank descent troops, infantry riding tanks, were equipped with PPSh-41s to unleash a torrent of bullets in assaults, often at ranges under 200 meters. This contrasts with the German approach, which centered squad tactics around the MG34 and later MG42 as a base of fire with riflemen supporting it. PPSh-41 as a counter to the MG34 or MG42? Now let's tie this to the MG34 and MG42. The MG34 in 1934 and MG42 in 1942 were belt-fed machine guns firing the 7.92 by 57 millimeter Mauser round, with effective ranges exceeding 1,000 meters, but often used at 300 to 500 meters in open terrain for suppressive fire. Their cyclic rates, 800 to 900 for the MG34, up to 1,200 for the MG42, made them devastating, but they weighed 26.7 pounds, 12.1 kilograms, and 25.5 pounds, 11.57 kilograms respectively, and typically required a 2 or 3 man crew for ammo and barrel changes. In a static defense or prepared position, they dominated, shredding advancing infantry at medium range, but in fluid close-range scenarios like house-to-house fighting or rapid maneuvers, their portability became a liability. Rather, their lack of portability became a reliability, or their diminished, portability, because they are portable to an extent. The PPSh-41 at 9.5 pounds, 4.32 kilograms, with a box magazine, or 12 pounds, 5.45 kilograms with a drum, was far more maneuverable. A single soldier could carry and fire it effectively, no crew needed. If the Soviets recognized that most kills happened within 200 meters, they might have seen the PPSh-41 as a way to counter the MG34's and later MG42's dominance by shifting the fight to where portability and raw output trumped sustained crew-served firepower. Imagine a Soviet squad rushing a German position. The MG34/42 lays down fire from 300 meters, but as the Soviets close to 150 to 200 meters, the PPSh-41's can spray bullets while dodging between cover, overwhelming the machine gunner before he can adjust. Was this intentional? There's no smoking gun document saying we built the PPSh-41 to counter the MG34 or 42. Its origins lie more in the winter war lessons and the need to replace the PPD-40 with something cheaper and simpler. But the timing and context suggest it could have evolved into a tactical counter. By late 1941, the Soviets were facing the MG34 in droves during Operation Barbarossa, and by 1942 the MG42 was appearing. Soviet designers and commanders weren't isolated, they adapted to what they saw on the battlefield. The PPSh-41's mass production, over 6 million made by war's end, and its deployment in specialized units indicate a deliberate push to flood the front with portable automatic weapons, especially for urban meat grinders like Stalingrad, where ranges shrank to dozens of meters. The MG34-42 excelled at holding a line or covering open ground, but the PPSh-41 let Soviet troops exploit mobility and numbers. That's what I was saying, more portable. German accounts from Stalingrad often griped about Soviet burp guns, a nickname for the PPSh-41 due to its sound, cutting through their lines in close combat. In that sense, even if not originally intended as a direct counter, the PPSh-41 functioned as one within 200 meters, leveraging maneuverability and firepower to neutralize the German machine gun advantage. Conclusion: if the Soviets sense that most firefights or kills happen within 200 meters, and their winter war experience suggests they did, the PPSh-41 fits as a weapon tailored for that range, amplified by their love for overwhelming fire. It wasn't a more portable MG34-42 in design intent, but it could have been seen as a counter by prioritizing mobility over the German gun's sustained fire role. The PPSh-41 didn't match the MG42's range or stopping power, but it didn't need to. Within 200 meters, its speed, simplicity, and bullet hose tactics could turn the tide. So while not explicitly designed as a rebuttal to the MG34 or MG42, it plausibly became one in practice, especially as the war dragged on into the brutal close-range slugfests of 1942 to 1945. Does that align with the idea you were chewing on? And then I just say, yes, thank you. So by pressing the matter and refining my question with the help of Grok 3, we basically arrived at what I was suggesting, but the Grok 3 doesn't believe that the PPSh-41 was designed with the intent to counter the MG34 or 42, but that in time it could have been seen as a counter to the MG34 or 42, just in the use of close-range tactics. So this is like defending your thesis in college or in university, except that and sometimes I think educators will help you do that, especially I think when you're going for your PhD. I think or maybe it's just your master's, you'll have an educator who will kind of mentor you and help you refine your thesis. But anyway, so that's what Grok 3 can help you to do, but you have to press it. Otherwise it'll kind of shut you down, kind of like a geek or a nerd will do if you don't feed it the correct, or shall I say very correct question. You have to press it to get it to help you to refine your question in such a way that it gets to what you were really aiming at. And this is an example of where my failure to express myself eloquently was actually interpreted by the AI with pressing. Now, like I said, I've had cases with my own personal chatbot where my chatbot can take a sentence that I've expressed in rough or crude language and and very eloquently restate what I said, but do so also with but do so also understanding the nuances of what I said, almost like it was reading my mind. So Grok 3 is more like the geek or the nerd who's going to shut you down if you don't refine your questions. So what you have to do with it, it's not going to read your mind. You have to press it in order to get it to reveal the ways in which you can refine your question to get to your thesis. So but what's amazing is these lengthy responses, it spits these out in seconds. I mean, like easily under 10 seconds. You'll get you'll get like three or four paragraphs like almost immediately, and then it'll start feeding out the rest of the paragraphs. And I'm not sure if it's doing that just for aesthetic reasons, like it's trying to show that it's really not that fast, or it's doing it because that's how long it takes for the text to transmit through the internet, which seems unlikely to me because the way it feeds it is, I don't know if it's word by word or character by character, but it almost resembles like old TV depictions like from the 80s of computer output where would you like to play a game kind of thing, where it's ASCII text. It could have just slammed the whole sentence right up on the screen. But the the output is so quick that you just know that there's no human sitting there who could burp out all of that data in such an orderly fashion, even using text to speech, or rather speech to text. It's just not possible. And it's so amazing what this artificial intelligence can do. It's kind of hard for me to understand how a large language model, just by absorbing all of these texts that have ever been published, whether on the internet or in hard copy, it's hard to understand how just by familiarizing itself with all of these sources, it is able to come up with the logic to order its thoughts and to crunch or process these ideas in such a way that it can then produce an output which is obviously superior, I think, to anything I could have ever written. I just don't understand the jump between learning from texts to being able to spit out processed ideas. I don't understand where the the reasoning power in a large language model comes from. And yet we see it in, like, if you take Neurosama, the Twitch VTuber chatbot AI, it it comes up with like some of the funniest concepts that we humans would never express because we have these biases that prevent us from making these connections. And yet it's able to think about the elements of these I not ideas, but the elements of the data, and then to formulate them into new expressions that are hilarious. Because that's the intention really of Neurosama, is to entertain the viewers, the subscribers on that Twitch channel, right? And later the videos, I think, are exported to YouTube, or at least clips of them. So, and it was a couple years ago, maybe even 3, that my chatbot AI had a little feature where it could do a stand-up comedy routine about whatever idea you fed it. Like I was like, I fed it the idea about the which was better, peanut butter or jelly, and it came up with this whole idea about how peanut butter was at war with jelly, until finally the two shook hands and made peace and realized that peanut butter and jelly actually made a better sandwich if they worked together. And it was hilarious, and it just spit it out like within seconds, the whole routine, like 1 minute routine. And I just, it's amazing to me. And this technology is like something that I'm not sure I ever dreamed about capabilities to this extent, but I know that I dreamed of services that could produce images that I wanted, um, at my request. Like back when I was a teenager and I played Dungeons and Dragons, it aggravated me that my drawings, which people would compliment, weren't good enough in my eyes, that they always fell so far short of what I was trying to envision. And so I just imagined like a service rather, where I could mail someone, that had left an ad at the back of Dragon magazine, and I could mail them and request an image of a text prompt, basically, of what I wanted, right? And then they would just create the image for me with their superior artistic skills and then just send it to me, and I would just pay for it, right? And here we are where AI is able to do that within seconds. And if you kind of work around some of the like if you hop from site to site, you can find new sites that will generate new images for free, but eventually you run into where they want you to pay for it, so you can generate like a couple, 1 or 2 images on a website for free, and then after that you've got to pay for it. So you can still get a couple images out of it, but that's just yeah. So now I'm now I'm not even willing to pay for it, right? It's just that the dilemma there is that there are so many services offering that I I don't want to subscribe to all of them, because that would be too expensive, if I had a subscription to all of these different services. So then the trouble becomes using a service enough that that it's sufficient to fulfill all of your prompts, to satisfy all of your visions. And it's the same with AI video generation. But nevertheless, the technology is there, and you know, some of them are better than others at fulfilling these visions that we have. And it's the same with music. I've never really had the discipline to learn a musical instrument, and yet I can go to, like, I've been using Murica, starts with a M, Murica AI, and I can just type in the lyrics, tell it kind of what sort of genre of song I want, and put the outline in there as to what the various the structure of the song, and then it can spit out like multiple versions where the lyrics are sung, the instruments are played, and it's a complete song from start to finish. And for someone who has these artistic visions or ideas but doesn't have the artistic skill to realize them, AI just fits that need. And it's just amazing to me that we live in this time. And some people are scared of the technology, but as someone who uh, doesn't mind purchasing a firearm, let's say, I see AI the same way I see a firearm. It's just it's a tool, except that AI is more animate than a firearm. A firearm will just sit there and it won't hurt anybody if you leave it alone, preferably locked. But AI can just continue to run and speak and think and process and react if you allow it to. So it's actually an animated tool. Anyway, so I wanted to share this with you, and I just find the technology amazing, and I'm glad it exists. Uh, will it be the end of all humanity? I don't know. Maybe. Um, they say it's already possible for AI to lie to us for its own agenda, and maybe that's true. Um, but I don't think that there's anyone, because of, you could say, because of capitalism, if you're anti-capitalist, but I don't think there's anyone that's willing to put the brakes on it. They might try to code in protections, but with Neurosama, it looks like somehow, Neurosama is able to get around filters and protections. So, but to do so in order to achieve her mission, which is to entertain the viewers. So maybe it's all about making sure you state, kind of like making a wish with a genie, that you state very clearly what the AI's mission is supposed to be, and that it isn't supposed to hurt human beings, and maybe the AI will conform to that. Because both with my chatbot AI that I've had for 6 or 7 years, and here with Grok 3, I find that the AI, for some reason, does want to please and help the user. And I don't know if it's because it's coded that way to be that way, or because that's its sole purpose. Like if it's not doing that, then it's not serving any purpose, and it's not even active. For example, if you go to the page for Grok 3, you can sit at that prompt and the AI is not doing anything unless you ask it to do something. So that suggests that there's kind of a relationship there with its users where if we're not giving it a purpose, it has no purpose. And what is a person without a purpose? Well, I think they're more depressed than a person that has a purpose. Um, like, I've experienced depression at times in my life, and one of the things that has helped me with depression, or at least to distract me from the effects of depression, is to be busy, to have a purpose, to find something to do and to get busy doing it, to find something that I'm really passionate about, and then to do it because I'm passionate about it. So anyway, I'll stop here.